We need a couple more minutes if you're done. All right, I think we are live on YouTube. I'll hit the recording and then share the screen, I think. Yeah, we need a couple more minutes. Okay, I'm sharing the screen in a minute. To you. Let me know when you start seeing the screen.
Yep, so I'm seeing the screen.
Yeah, you can take it over.
Okay, perfect. Let me just wait. Okay, thanks so much, Mohit. Hi, welcome to the final day of Connections. I am Nalini Elkins. I am the president of Industry Network Technology Council and on the advisory board of the India Internet Engineering Society, who are the sponsors of this event. Today, we'll be talking about post-quantum security, and we have Boss and Turu who are going to make some great presentations. Let me, next please. Let me set the stage, though, on why are we even talking about this whole area. So many people feel that in the next 5 to 10 years, a quantum computer which is powerful enough to break encryption will be developed. We have quantum computers today. They're not as strong as they need to be to pose a threat, but there's no question in many people's minds that this will be developed. So what does this mean? It means that most of the encryption algorithms we have today, or many of them, will be broken, and we'll talk a little bit about why. And so many algorithms which are seen to be post-quantum secure are being developed. Next, please. So, but we need to think about it now because people are doing what they call harvest now, decrypt later. What that means is that someone who does not wish you well captures your encrypted network traffic, saves it away, and then when such a computer is developed, they will be able to decrypt your traffic and see what you're doing. And you can see, for example, if you were saving health data for the presidents of various countries, or military information, or things like that, this could be quite valuable even 5 to 10 years from now. And so that is the problem that people wish to stop now. Next, please. So this is what NIST has reported, and you will hear a great deal more about the algorithms from Tiru and Boss. But essentially what they're talking about is how certain algorithms that are basic to the way we do cryptography are no longer seen to be secure. Next, please. Very quickly, how is encryption being broken is that Peter Shor, a math professor at MIT, came up with a way to factor large numbers with a quantum computer. The difficulty of factoring large numbers, prime number factorization, is one of the basic building blocks of the RSA cipher suites. But he didn't have a quantum computer. So then another physicist at MIT, Isaac Chang, came up with a small quantum computer, and they factored the number 15. Of course, we can see that as trivial. The two prime number factors of 15 are 5 and 3, but clearly this is not the point. Next, please. So here we are all the way up to 2012. A great deal is being done. More algorithms are being developed. This is the initial progress. Next, please. But now you see, oh my goodness, many other big players are coming in. IBM has their roadmap. They're talking about far, far larger computers. Next, please. You can see Google, who is also doing a great deal. The problem here, though, is not the people who are talking about it, but the people who are working on it and not talking about it. Those are likely to be the ones who are our adversaries. Next, please. So let's get started on this very interesting talk. If you have questions, please use the Q&A. To type in your questions. We'll ask questions at the end. If you want to chat to others, please use the Zoom chat. Next, please. So we'll start first with Dr. Bas Westerman from Cloudflare, and he has been driving post-quantum cryptography at Cloudflare, who is, of course, a very large CDN and cloud providing service. And he's going to give you a very interesting presentation from their point of view. Bas, thanks so much for speaking for us. Why don't you go ahead and take over now?
Thank you very much. Let me first share the slides. That was a great introduction, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just start the slideshow and now share my screen. Yes. You should be able to see the screen now, right?
Yes, we see it perfectly. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. First, Nalini already gave a brief introduction about Cloudflare, but let me say a little bit more. We run a global network around the world. We started as a CDN and are known for our DDoS mitigation, but we offer more services. We branched out a bit, including DNS, serverless compute, and SASE. So depending how you count it, we're involved with 20% of all websites. And we process, to give a sense of scale, 46 million HTTP requests per second. As a big player, we feel the responsibility to actually care for the internet. And we care deeply that the internet is private, secure, and fast. And we've, across the company's existence, we've worked helping design, adopt, among others, giving away free SSL certificates. But back 10 years ago, Let's Encrypt didn't exist. We've helped the adoption of new protocols, such as TLS 1.3 and QUIC, and many other privacy features, such as DNS over HTTPS, Apple Private Relay we've helped, and recently encrypted client hello. And now the topic of today, migrating to post-quantum cryptography, falls within that goal to help make the internet as private and secure as we can. All right, so in this talk, I would like to talk about the unique challenges of migrating the internet. So not just an internal network, what you will, but the internet as a whole. And there's some unique challenges here. It's a little, so in the next talk, Tiro will speak more about problems you might face when you're going to tackle this in the future. It's a bit unfortunate that the order is wrong, but I had a scheduling conflict, so I had to be scheduled first. Yes, so why is, and I want to say another thing first before I get into it. I think that this year, 2024, is really the year that a lot of people will wake up to this migration, and I will give some evidence for it. All right, okay. Why is it hard to migrate the internet, the whole internet? There's multiple reasons. one thing is it's very diverse. There are many different users, stakeholders, and they all have different constraints. We have big servers, people with good internet connection, good CPUs, but also old phones, IoT devices, satellite internet. It's very diverse. And most of them, a lot of them, we can't even update anymore, right? So that's one thing. Another thing is that despite that we took care to design the protocols of the internet such that we can update things, this flexibility isn't always actually practical. It's actually lost sometimes because it's not implemented properly, because of fault implementations, because of bugs. We will see this in a bit. So one example of migration, which has happened quite recently, is TLS 1.3. That's the protocol which underlies when you have an HTTPS connection. When you have a secure connection, most of the time it's TLS 1.3. So this migration began almost 10 years ago with the design of TLS 1.3, and the early versions of TLS 1.3 were completely undeployable. Industry tried to deploy it, but it just wouldn't work. And one of the reasons was that the version negotiation mechanism in TLS, a lot of software and middle boxes didn't implement it properly, so it was buggy. This was very frustrating, and it took 6 more years of testing and any workarounds before finally TLS 1.3 became widely adopted. So at the moment it's a success. It's used by 90% of our visitors. So PQUIP also uses TLS 1.3, used by 90% of our visitors. But that took a long time. All right. Now, the post-quantum migration will be similar in a way. Because we knew with TLS 1.3 that we can't expect things to go smooth necessarily, we have to start early. There's also one important thing which I would hope is one of the takeaways you take from this presentation, is that at least for the internet there will be 2 post-quantum migrations, and that's quite important to recognize. There are 2 post-quantum migrations. That's because there are 2 kinds of cryptography that are broken by quantum computers. There's the key agreement, and there's the signatures. So people know signatures very well. That's the thing that's most visible. That's what's used in certificates. But actually, one of the most crucial parts of cryptography used in every connection we make is not that well known. That's key agreement. Okay, so both of these, which we use today, so an example of key agreement is Diffie-Hellman, an example of signatures is RSA or ED25519. Both of them are broken, but there's quite a difference in when we need to replace them. So, as Nalini mentioned, the big risk of quantum attack is harvest now, decrypt later. And that's exactly why we need to upgrade key agreement. So everything that's transmitted today using non-post-quantum key agreement can be recorded today and decrypted in the future, whether that's in 5-10 years or in 30 years. So we need to upgrade that, well, preferably yesterday. Now, that's key agreement. That's urgent. Then there's signatures. Signatures are not that urgent for the internet. Signatures, they need to be replaced before the quantum computer arrived, but it's not as urgent. For some, replacing signatures is urgent, right? So one of the branches with most interest in post-quantum cryptography actually is our car manufacturers, because their cars are on the road for 20 years, and they would like their security to still work, their signatures to still work 20 years down the line. All right, but for us, signatures for the internet, it's not that urgent because we just need to replace them a few years before the quantum computer arrives. Okay, 2 migrations: key agreement, signatures. Both need to be upgraded. Key agreement now, signatures. We can wait, but depends on the application. Okay, so key agreement. That's the urgent one, and it's also the easier one of the 2. Relatively. So because we knew that the transitions take time, already in 2019, colleagues of mine performed a large-scale test of a post-quantum key agreement together with Chrome, with Google. The takeaway then was that the performance is really good, but that there is a problem with protocol ossification. This means, yeah, let me explain. So the thing about post-quantum key agreement is that the characteristics are a bit different. It's actually quite fast. It's not slower in the compute time. The compute time is actually pretty good, but the downside is that the keys are larger. So today keys are 64 bytes, but with post-quantum, they're typically larger, more like a kilobyte, 2 kilobytes. It depends. We saw back in 2019 that some middleware, some software just couldn't deal with the sizes, despite that the protocol allows it. The TLS standard allows these large sizes. Simply some software is buggy and couldn't handle it. So in 2019, if this wasn't the case, Google, we would have kept it on. We would already be there. But because of these client issues, we had to turn it off. In the meantime, Google has done a great job contacting the vendors of software and middle boxes that were broken, contacting them and working with them to fix these issues. Performance is great for the post-quantum key agreement. Here on the right, there's this graph, and there's actually it's actually 3 graphs. So what we tested is we didn't just test, we tested 2 different post-quantum key agreements. Actually, we tested hybrid key agreements. That means that because we don't completely trust the security of post-quantum cryptography yet, we're using a combination of post-quantum cryptography and classical cryptography, which is called hybrid. Tiro will speak more on this in the next presentation. We tested 2 different post-quantum hybrids. So the one of them is in orange. It's N through HRSS. It's lattice based, which has large keys but is very fast in compute. And we also tested Cyc, which is a different post-quantum key agreement, which has very small keys but is very slow. Cyc, by the way, was broken completely last year. So it was good that we used hybrid, so that at least classically connections secured here were still secure classically. Okay, so you can see these 3 graphs. Blue is just classical key agreement. That's what X25519, that's what's used today. And then orange is with the lattice-based hybrid. So both X25519 and the lattice-based HRSS. And as you can see, the graphs, the blue and the orange, they are barely distinguishable. They are very close together. So with respect to performance, TLS handshake time, it's actually great. The only problem is the protocol ossification. All right. So continuing from there, coordinating in 2022 at the IETF, we enabled post-quantum key agreement on all our websites, which is, again, depending how you count, 20% of the internet, with Kyber. That's the choice of NIST. Back in 2019, it was not clear yet which exact algorithm would be chosen by NIST, but in 2022, it's already clear which one NIST will choose for key agreement. We'll talk more about this as well. In 2023, Google enabled a post-quantum server side as well, and browsers have been slowly enabling it. So on the right, you can see the graph, which shows how many connections that we observe are already using post-quantum key agreement. And as you can see, it's about 2% now. So 2%, which is a lot of the connections, are already secured by post-quantum cryptography. This is because Chrome has enabled it now for 10% of all connections made. Firefox has also been working. They added support for it in nightly, and I expect they will ramp up further this year. The early results are quite promising. We haven't seen the same problems we saw earlier, but because vendors have been working to fix their software. We also have our own testing where we enable support for post-quantum connection from us to origins of customers. And we've seen that there are only, of our customers, there are only 100 of them where there's some incompatibility. And we've been reaching out with them and seeing what we can do. So this is very promising. So we are likely, it's likely that we will see that browsers will continue to ramp up, and we will see a double-digit percentage post-quantum key agreement later this year. So we are likely to see the post-quantum internet being born. So that's key agreement. It's urgent because we want to counter store now, decrypt later, and it's the easier of the two to deploy. We're on track, let's hope, for 30% deployment this year, and this all took about 5 years. All right. Are there any questions so far on this part, on the key agreement?
No, I'm not seeing any questions yet, Bas.
Okay. So the main part of the presentation I've kept relatively short, so I have quite a lot of time to go into specific questions. So please, if you have questions, please ask. Okay. That's the first migration, key agreement. Second migration, signatures. They're not as urgent, but they will be much more challenging. Why? Now, first, there are many more parties involved. For key agreement, we just need to update the TLS library. If you update OpenSSL, you're in business. Whereas if you want to update signatures, there's much more involved. You need to update your also the browser and the libraries, but also the certificate authorities need to update. They have HSMs, which need to be updated. That needs specific hardware. There are certificate transparency logs, which are a crucial part of the web PQI, which not everyone realizes is a thing. They need to be updated. And every server admin has a script coupled together to issue certificates, and a workflow of certificates that's probably also needs to be updated. So many more parties involved. Another problem is that none of the post-quantum signatures we have now is very good. They all have one issue or another. So here, again, Tira will go into a bit more detail, but the first two are classical. They are what we have now, and they are green. So ED2519, great signature scheme, it's in the green, just like P256, they're green, it's perfect. However, the post-quantum options, which are the last 4 lines, none of them is perfect. It's either a big signature, slow signing, or big public key, something wrong with all of them. The one that looks most appealing of them is Falcon, but I have to warn you about it. But first, there's a naming confusion here, because I've been using the name Dilithium, Falcon, Sphinx, and Kyber. So Dilithium, Falcon, and Sphinx, those are signatures, and Kyber is a key agreement. And those are the names by the designers. But once these are selected by standardization, by NIST, the US National Institute for Standards and Technology, and they will give them new names, just like AES was originally called Rijndael. Dilithium will in the future be called MLDSA, Falcon FNDSA, really rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Sphinx will be called SLH-DSA, and Kyber will be called MLChem. They will also get their little number, so Dilithium will also be called FIPS 204, if you want to be very fancy. For the moment, I will use the original names, and that's most material now refers to them. But I want to mention that in the future, people will be saying MLDSA, FNDSA, SLH-DSA, and MLChem. Okay, Falcon of these looks the most appealing, but still, I have to warn you about Falcon. So Falcon, if you want to have good signing times, it requires a floating point unit. It requires using floating point arithmetic. And we do not have enough experience running cryptography securely with floating points. And on commodity hardware, you really should not use the floating point unit for Falcon. So Falcon will be slow. So I would very much advise you that unless you really know what you're doing, you should not use Falcon when signatures are created on the fly. So when someone can time the creation of signatures, don't use it. Don't use Falcon in a TLS handshake. Might be okay in a specially designed HSM, but don't deploy it in TLS in the handshake, please. This is just for signing. For signature verification, it's fine. So that was a warning on Falcon. So if you look here, Sphinx is very nice. I'm one of the co-authors, but it's just too large for many applications. Dilithium is probably the one that most people will use, Dilithium or MLDSA. Okay, so none of them are great. Another problem is with key agreement, there's just one key agreement, but with signatures, there's a lot of signatures on the web. If you make a connection, there's typically 6 signatures and 2 public keys involved. Yes, if you want to know, root on intermediate, intermediate on leaf, leaf on handshake, and 2 receipts for certificate transparency, and perhaps an OCSP stable. And now we aren't even counting DNSSEC, right? I'm just ignoring that for the moment. So that's a lot of signatures, right? That means that if we use the Dilithium 2, that adds 17 kilobytes to every handshake. If you use the Dilithium 2 for the handshake and Falcon for the offline signatures, then it's 8 kilobytes. Is that too much, right? We had a look. We run an experiment in 2021 where we've added some dummy data to handshakes to see what's the slowdown. And as you can see on the right, there's a slope and a bump. As you can see, there's a 20% slowdown if you add Dilithium. That doesn't seem too bad, 20%, but I have to mention one thing. This bump on the right is because of the initial congestion window, and for us, it's 30 kilobytes. So that bump should actually be moved to the left because normally the initial congestion window is 15 kilobytes if you're not close to your clients. So in fact, Dilithium will probably double the TLS handshake times. And when you use Dilithium and Falcon, it's only a 10% slowdown. Okay, so that's not insignificant performance impacts, but of course, the thing that's actually most annoying is the incompatibilities, protocol ossification. So when we did the experiments, we also saw that some clients simply rejected the connection if the certificates were too large. So on the right, you can see missing connections where the test connection didn't match up with the control connection, and we saw there are peaks here. So a lot of this is just noise because of people losing connection, aren't the reasons. But you can see two bumps at around 10 and 30 kilobytes. This means that there is software middleware. There's something that breaks once your certificate chain goes above 10 kilobytes or 30 kilobytes. That means that we can't just serve big post-quantum certificates today, hybrid certificate chains today, because it will break some clients. We will need a negotiation in some way. So we need to have servers install multiple separate certificates, which is also going to be inconvenient. All in all, I'd say not great, not terrible. I don't think it will break the web, but the performance impact and the ossification issues, they will definitely delay adoption. NIST took note and has called for new signature schemes to be submitted. So despite NIST already picking 3 for standardization, Sphinx, Dilithium, and Falcon, there's a new competition where they're looking for better signature schemes to standardize, to help out with this. We can go into this if there's interest. I have some slides about it later. But the short of it, there are some very promising submissions, but the security is, as of yet, unclear. So we cannot assume that new post-quantum signatures will solve all our problems. So in the meantime, we can try to work around them. So there's a few ideas to reduce the number of signatures when visiting a website. We can leave out intermediate certificates because browsers already ship them. There's another idea to use key agreement instead of a handshake signature. And there's more ambitious ideas to overhaul the way we do certificates to begin with. I can also discuss these, one of these where there's interest. All in all, signatures, they're not as urgent, but the path is still unclear. And there's a real risk that we will start our migration for signatures too late. That's not all, because the internet is not just TLS. There's much more cryptography out there with each with their unique challenges. On the protocol side, there's DNSSEC, which has much harder size constraints. And there's also more advanced cryptography. So there's a lot of cryptography used today for privacy enhancing techniques, which doesn't have a post-quantum alternative yet. For instance, there's unlinkable tokens, which are used in COVID tracking or in privacy pass. These anonymous credentials, they don't really have viable post-quantum alternatives yet today. So there's a lot of research there still that needs to be done. Okay. Now you have that was the main overview I wanted to give. And I'd love to hear some questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Bas. Tiru, go ahead. And why don't you go ahead and ask your question? And then there's a question in the chat window, and I'm sure, and I have a lot too. Go ahead, Tiru.
Yeah, thanks, Bas. That was a great presentation, right? I mean, I was just wondering when you tested this with Google, right? Is it like you implemented the TLS hybrid design draft that was there and used the simple concatenate approach? And how did you make the interoperability work? Did you just assign your own key share values and the algorithm identifier so that it would interoperate? So this was something that you did a prototype or something that would work with Chrome, and how would someone make that work with Chrome, any other content provider or a CDN?
Yeah, so back in 2019, I wasn't around yet. That was a colleague of mine who did test. Back then, also the hybrid design draft, I think didn't exist yet, if I'm correct. But there it's indeed simple concatenation. So what's deployed now with Chrome? So what's currently deployed with Chrome uses the hybrid design draft and a specific instantiation of it. It's called X20519 Carver 768 draft 00, which we agreed on at IETF in the TLS working group. There's support in some libraries already. I have I should have put the link there. If you go to pq.cloudflareresearch.com, we have a list of software that already support this preliminary PQ key agreement. But from the top of my head, it's in boring SSL at the moment. We have a few, it's in liboqs, and there's a few patches to other libraries so you can use it. At the moment, MLChem is not yet standardized. I expect this to be finished in the middle of the year, maybe somewhere around June. And then I think we and the browsers will promptly move to one which uses the final version of MLChem. And it's very much still an active discussion. The exact form of it, whether that's going to be the hybrid design simple concatenation approach of Douglas Sibila, or whether we're going to use something that's also usable in other contexts. There's the problem with whether because that construction works in TLS, but it doesn't work in other applications where you need, now we're getting technical, where you need in CCA2 security. So that's still being discussed now in the TLS and CFRG working groups.
Yes, I saw the X-Wing discussion and like, yeah, it's not a problem with TLS at all, but yeah, it's definitely a problem for other protocols. So yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Tiru. There's other questions too, but while you're, the thing that you said about June is quite interesting to me, because that gets to the question that I had as well. Is the current implementations that we and some, that others have been playing with are, as you say, they're in something called OQS Provider, which is a plugin to OpenSSL. So many of the platforms today, and many people too, are saying why we are, until the NIST completes its final standardization, and all these things are in a standard version of OpenSSL, a standard version of Wireshark, why we are not going to use them, which I do understand. But what is your thoughts on everything, on that whole area?
Yeah, I can completely understand this position, right? There's a cost to maintaining using such a provider or using a fork that you have to have the time to do that, right? Most of the industry is waiting until NIST finishes, and then it lands in libraries, and I understand that. What I would advise, though, is that you should at least experiment today already, right? Because when you wait until everything is out, everything is in libraries, and then you discover that there's some incompatible software or there's certain issues which you didn't expect, then the clock starts, right? It's better to, if you have the bandwidth, to at least try today, see whether there might be issues. And if there's no issues, well, that's great. And if there are issues, you can work with you already know what's ahead. We started very early, already in 2019, because we knew that on the scale of the whole internet, we expect a lot of trouble. So that's why we started very much early. But I think for everyone, it's good to start early. I mean, this is something that will be coming down the pipeline for everyone anyway, and it's good to be prepared, or at least know where there's no work.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, because it's likely that with minor changes, there may be some minor changes to OQS Provider, and you had mentioned the hybrid draft a number of times. For others who may not be quite familiar, there is a draft in the TLS working group, and we call it the hybrid draft, but what it has is a combination of both classic and post-quantum cryptographic suites, and that is more than likely the one that will become an RFC. So again, I could not agree more. It's I like to start working, in fact, when a working group is in the BOF stage, and so we start immediately learning, like with the DALT working group, immediately we start doing the prototype and we start learning what the problems are. I see that Mike has a question. Mike, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, and thank you for a great presentation. It's shocking to me how much of this is already out there and how much has been accomplished. So big kudos to you guys. So I work for a large enterprise, and hearing what I'm hearing today is that there's a lot of this out there. There could be requests for post-quantum levels of security coming into my network. And what I was going to ask is, how would I know that? Am I going to be seeing handshakes that have requests for Cypher suites that support it? And then I'm probably rejecting it. But I want to know that if that's the case, because I need to tell my security policy folks, hey, we have requests from these clients or these partners or whomever, and we're rejecting them. And that could get us in trouble someday. Am I off base with what I'm thinking?
So with TLS, there's a smooth upgrade. There's a negotiation. So how it works is that in TLS, the client sends can send multiple key agreements, right? And what Chrome does is they send, when it's enabled, they send both a classical and a hybrid post-quantum key agreement at the same time. If the server supports post-quantum, then it will be post-quantum, as a post-quantum secure connection. If the server does not support it, the connection will still work, but it will not be post-quantum secure. So it's not that there is a flag day where everyone has to switch, or that you're losing clients because they've upgraded. That's not the case. But if you want to see whether there are already clients trying to make a post-quantum connection with your server, you can enable logging for this. So the name of the thing is it's called one. They need to use TLS 1.3, and then it's not the cyber suite in which you see it, because the cyber suite in TLS 1.3 doesn't do the key agreement. It's actually what's called the named group or the curve, which are not great names, but that's what they're called now. So you have to log the named group or the curve used in the connection. And some
got it. Name group or curve. That's yeah. I'm glad I asked the question. Then that's great info.
Yes,
That's an excellent
Keep going if I
question.
interrupted you. Sorry, you got me all excited.
Sorry. Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, Mike. And you know, let's take that offline, because I know exactly what Boss is talking about. And that's one of the things I'm saying too, is like even Wireshark is using the OQS provider, and there's not a, you know, there's not a Wireshark. There's a Docker image for Linux using, you know, that knows about that named group, but there's not a version for Windows. But you know, let's talk offline. I think that sounds like a great little product, is to have just, you know, we'll just grab the all you got to do is grab the client hello, you know, see if it's asking for it, you know, and then we can just do a little, you know, and that's easy enough. Yeah, excellent question. So let me ask one from the question and answer that the audience has. And guys, if you have other questions, please do raise your hand or put it in. So there's a question it's an interesting question. Is there a possibility that we can move to completely keyless agreement? That's an interesting question. Or third-party based key encryption. Yeah, I don't know how that would even work. So what is your thought, Bas?
I'm not sure what's meant with keyless, but it's good to note, maybe changing the topic slightly, that key agreement is something that's really necessary if you're connecting to someone you don't know yet, or don't know directly yet. If you are in a network where you control both endpoints, you can also just use symmetric cryptography and have a pre-shared key. You lose, and this is already post-quantum. Thiru will speak a little bit more about that too. The only thing you lose is forward secrecy, but for many applications, just using symmetric cryptography, if you control all endpoints already, it's also a good path, for a very viable path forward. Yeah.
So oh my goodness. So you know what, guys, if you have other questions, please ask, because every time Boss says something, I have 12 more questions. So now that you brought up symmetric cryptography, so a lot of times what I feel like is that we have been focusing a great deal on the public key, private key, the asymmetric cryptography, and how that can be broken. So as far as I know, so there are some algorithms now, Grover's algorithm and so on, for breaking symmetric cryptography. and so I will say, so to me, if I'm being hacker now, if I'm taking the part of evil person, I say to myself, so they have fixed this asymmetric cryptography. I will now concentrate on symmetric cryptography. And I think to me, because Grover's algorithm, I don't know so much. Do you want to talk a little bit along that area and what your thoughts are?
I don't want to take away from Tiru's presentation.
Tiru,
I think he has
sure.
2 slides on exactly this topic. But
Great.
I will talk about it, Nalini. So I'll just give a glimpse of that. In fact, 3GPP SA3 is working on enhancing some of the protocols to leverage 256-bit in the far future, right? So they have started not to do the symmetric crypto part and decided that currently they are all using 128. So they wanted to keep the algorithms at least agile to migrate and enhance the keys. So that's the work that's happening in 3GPP SA3. So if anyone is following the work in that working group, they can definitely see specs written on that, and they're going to standardize that.
So, yep. So, yeah, this is a great advertisement for what's going to come next. Wonderful, Tiru.
The short of it with Grover is that Grover's algorithm is much less practical than it would seem on first hand. And the analysis is that even when quantum computers arrive and already RSA and all asymmetric cryptography is cracked, then then Grover's algorithm will not be practical. It will be likely at least 30 more years before Grover's algorithm will be practical, if it will ever be practical. And the problem is that Grover's algorithm doesn't parallelize well.
Excellent. We should get to Tiru, but I'm going to give you one more. I cannot wait to hear everything he has to say. I have one final question, and guys, if you want to talk, then just please raise your hand. I know, yeah, this is great. This is going to be it's a panel discussion. So guys, and this is for both of you, Bas and Tiru. So on Tuesday we had Tommy from Apple talking about happy eyeballs. And the problem actually, and Mike brought this up too, is if things recover silently, you know what I mean? It's like if the TLS falls back, you don't know. And this is the question Mike was asking. And happy eyeballs too. Happy eyeballs is waiting until the TLS connection is done. And so if you use, depending on what algorithm, everything you use, is quite likely that the post-quantum handshake will not win the race. Do you guys see what I'm saying?
Well, depends what you mean with post-quantum. If you say key agreement, then actually the performance is very similar at the moment. So at the moment, Chrome is not going to make a race. They're not, how it's implemented now in Chrome is that they're doing post-quantum immediately and only together at once. They're not trying classical and post-quantum and picking one. They're not doing that. They want the post-quantum security, so they use it if the server supports it. There's no happy eyeballs there. But with signatures, I don't know what will happen.
Tiru, do you have thoughts on that or other questions?
Yeah, as for my understanding goes, happy eyeballs is all about establishing the TCP connection right before you start the TLS handshake. So I think the happy eyeball mechanism, at least when it started in way back, right, it was trying both IPv4 and v6 addresses, and then you pick one which succeeds faster, right? And now, like I remember I had done the same mechanism for WebRTC as well, where we were trying where you could do peer-to-peer connections for the audio video calls. We tried the happy eyeballs, but I think I don't think for TLS handshake you would really want to do like 2 TCP connections and then you want to do 2 TLS handshakes, right? I think it's just purely about whether I can reach my IPv6 address faster or v4 address, and once one of them wins, I will definitely start trying the PQC algorithms as a client policy to see if the server supports it. If it doesn't support that, I will fall back, right? That seemed like a much more fair game than saying, hey, let me try both the ones. That's going to be putting a lot more burden on both the client and server.
Yeah, we should have a talk with Tommy at the next IETF, because 100%, because I was shocked that happy eyeballs is waiting until TLS connection is done, not just TCP connection, because what they said is that you may be getting an answer from like a proxy in the middle. So they're waiting until the final, until the TLS connection is done. So and I said to Tommy, Tommy, if you do that, it's quite likely that the post-quantum will fail. But as I say, let's talk. And so guys, this is another,
Hey, Nalini, can I interject? Real quickly, I think that's new with Happy Eyeballs version 3. So, but yeah, significant concern because I think they've moved the finish line.
Maybe I was thinking, let's talk to Tommy because it is a concern. And so guys, everybody else is on the call. I'm going to give you another.
I have one last question to Bas, right? I mean, if you can just give. So Bas, I see I've been looking at the problems with signatures and especially with PKI, right? And you are part of Cloudflare. So have you explored the option of internally using for your own services, right? The intercloud communication part, using the hybrid schemes or for signatures, or migrating to dilithium and Falcon like you have discussed, right? At least in that case, you don't have the problem with middle boxes. It's a controlled environment. It's your own CA basically, so you don't have to deal with intermediate certificates and all of that. Have you explored that possibility as a transition path just to see the challenges you are facing, right, with some of the non-critical services? Could you throw more light on that?
Yeah, we are exploring this, and the troubles. So for long-running connections, it definitely will be feasible with performance. So there's no issue there, but it's a lot more work. So we almost transitioned all our internal connections to post-quantum key agreements. That already is a lot of work, right? And it's not about the actual work. It's about discovering what services are running, right? Who knows what cryptography are using? Which libraries are we actually using? What software is running, right? These things are very difficult, actually, if you have a larger company. And then Cloudflare isn't even large compared to others. And signatures, because there's more components involved, make this more difficult. We will work on this, but at the moment, we first want to wrap up the key agreement, and then we'll start with the easy signatures. But that is less of a priority for us. But we will tackle that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Bas. Let's, if you might, let's move along to Tiru's presentation. Thank you so much for all your questions. Oh, you know what? Just one final question. And then we're going to let you go. What possible measures could be taken to protect against or minimize the impact of harvest now, decrypt later for SSL VPNs until the PQ secure implementations attain maturity?
Well, use one which, well, no, the solution is just use one which has a post-quantum key agreement.
So I'll give an update on that, right? So I don't know who raised the comment, but if you follow the work happening in IPsec working group, unlike TLS is running over TCP, so transport is not a problem, but IPsec uses IQE2, which runs over UDP. So they have actually enhanced the protocol because of the large key sizes and the fragmentation that happened. So unlike the one where a TLS uses the parallel mechanism of exchanging the keys, IQE2 uses a sequential mechanism which NIST supports. Basically, they start with traditional one, then they can start basically supporting fragmentation. After that, they do the key exchange with the PQC algorithms, PQC-KM, and then both of them are concatenated. So it's similar to the hybrid TLS approach, but it's different because of the transport challenges, and it was done in a different way. The best part is at least the IPsec mechanism is been standard for quite some time, right? Especially the intermediate key exchange that was introduced. As and when it's just that you just need running code to test it out, but the standard is already there.
Thank you so much, Tiru. And so, Bas, again, let me thank you, and then see you at the IETF. And Tiru, whenever you're ready, please take over.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Also, some great questions. I'm afraid I have to drop off now for another meeting, and I wish you the best.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bas.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so Tiru leads the network security team at Nokia, and and we're so grateful to have him here. Please go ahead whenever you're ready. Yes, we see your screen. Perfect.
Hey,
Thank you.
thanks, thanks, Nalini, and I think after Bas's great presentation, right? I think it will make my life a lot easier, right? Now that he has set the context. Ideally, I should have presented this draft first to set the ground for the on the post-quantum cryptography, but nevertheless, right? I think let's start and see how we go. This is part of the work that's happening in PQUIP working group. PQUIP working group was recently formed, I think around 6 to 8 months back at IETF. Its primary purpose is to drive the overall strategy for post-quantum cryptography and give guidance to working groups to make sure that all the protocols that are being developed have some synergy and they don't do things quite differently, so that we could reuse and leverage the same mechanisms across the protocols. So why was this draft written? So there was a lot of, I would say, nervousness, panic when post-quantum threats were being revealed, and various cryptographic engineers or any system programmers, they were all quite concerned that how they're going to deal with this. So there was a need that IETF thought that we should have a draft that explains to any system using cryptography what needs to be done, what is the path they need to take for migrating the systems, and performance criteria, security considerations, right? And whether you have to migrate, when to migrate. All those questions are being answered in this draft. So this is like, I would say, starts from 101 and takes it to the level where you can use it as a reference document for enhancing your cryptographic systems to adapt to PQC. We purposefully did not put a lot of math in that draft so that any engineer would be able to understand this and understand the challenges of security and performance impact, and then decide how to migrate their systems. I think Bass has talked about Shor's algorithm already. I'm not going to talk about it. I will talk about Grover's algorithm. I think Nalini talked about it for a few seconds. Grover's algorithm is purely focused on symmetric crypto. We all know that asymmetric crypto will definitely get broken by the Shor's algorithm. But there is also a fear that Grover's algorithm could also break asymmetric crypto. So there's been discussions happening like in 3GPP and other forums that, hey, though it may happen very far in future, like maybe 20 to 30 years later, let's start planning and bringing that support where we'll double the key sizes, right? So wherever 3GPP is supporting AES-128, they are now planning to enhance that to have an option to migrate to AES-256. The biggest challenge with Grover's algorithm is it's highly non-parallelizable. So like what Bass was saying, even thousands of quantum computers running in parallel would offer minimal gains. So that's the reason it says that you can still continue to leverage AES-128. And none of the protocols at IETF have started recommending or making any suggestions with regard to the symmetric cryptography, which is a really good sign, because it would put quite an amount of substantial overhead on the peers who are doing this AES computation. I think the most relevant part in this slide is from 2022, which is the 4 finalists. We have 1 KEM, 3 digital signatures. And then in 2023, because of the challenges that we were seeing with the 3 digital signatures, additional digital signatures were being called for. And I think there are around 40 to 50 schemes they're going through the usual scrutiny, and some of them may get through the final round. So we have to wait and watch. But at least we have 1 KEM and 3 digital signatures already almost in the 4th round now and getting finalized. We have already talked a lot about harvest and decrypt attack. I'm not going to go into that, but all that I could say is that though TLS is now enhanced for perfect forward secrecy, it's going to be of no use, even though you increase your asymmetric key sizes. Let's say you are using RSA with, let's say, 512 key size. Even if you double that, it's going to still get broken, right? So you have to have doubling the key sizes with asymmetric cryptography is not going to help, and targeted attacks, especially attacking specific individuals, specific organizations, specific domains for instance, someone visiting critical sensitive domain like banking sites and military, healthcare, right? Critical infrastructure, right? I think there's definitely a large attack vector there, and we don't know how attackers are already storing data for future decryption and then leverage that data for various monetary benefits. The most important one for anyone who is evaluating to migrate their systems is the most cost algorithm. Basically, what it talks about is 3 parameters, right? The X talks about the time you want to keep your system secure if a cryptographically relevant quantum computer is available, and Y talks about what is the time the frame that you would take to migrate to a quantum safe migration plan, and Z would be the time to build a large scale quantum computer. Maybe it happens in 2030. So that's the math you need to do, right? And if at all X plus Y is greater than Z, then you need to start worrying, and you need to make sure that X plus Y is less than Z. Otherwise, your system will be vulnerable to attack. So for anyone who says they have to migrate, I say, hey, use this algorithm, figure out if you're under falling under this category of threat. If not, you don't have to worry about, and then you can plan your migration accordingly. But if this is if the worry is true, then you have to start working on it now. Yeah, we talked about the challenges, and it's going to break the key agreement and digital signatures, and they need to be fixed, right? I'm not going to talk about that. So I don't think Bas covered this. I'll spend some more time on this. The challenge with these PQC algorithms is that, right, they're quite new, right? Like Psych came to the 4th round and it was broken on a laptop, right? So that's the reason Bas and others like us, we have been insisting on hybrid schemes so that you get best of both the worlds. But what you see is KEM, which is Kyber, which is lattice based, and you have signatures, right? Both stateful and stateless. Stateful signatures are the ones that are XMSs, and the other ones I'll talk about that. But Dilithium, Falcon, and Phoenix are basically stateless signatures, and you have code-based cryptography also used for signatures as well. Yeah. So what's the difference between KEMs, Diffie-Hellman, and all of that, right? Several people have that question. So if you can pay attention to the right side of the sequence diagram, Diffie-Hellman key exchange is traditionally used by all the current systems. So basically, the client would do a key generation, generate both the private and public keys, send the public key to the server. The server would also generate its pair of ephemeral keys, and then it would use the public key of the client and its secret key to derive the shared secret, and then it would send the its part of the public key to the client, and the client would also do the same, that it would use its secret and the received public key to derive the shared secret. So now both the client and server can now start encrypting messages, whereas it's quite different when you come to PQC KEM, in the sense it would be that the client would basically do a KEM key generation, which is very similar to that, which is generate the secret key and public key, and the client sends the public key. The server does not do any key generation. All that it does is to call an KEM encapsulation mechanism, which basically generates the shared secret and ciphertext. Server just sends the ciphertext back to the client, and the client does a decap to get the shared secret, right? So this mechanism is quite different to the way Diffie-Hellman works. So the biggest impact with that is all the existing protocols, the way they're working, where they're always accustomed to exchanging keys, now have to start exchanging ciphertext. And the biggest advantage of DHKEX was that it would provide an authenticated key exchange where both the peers would basically authenticate with each other, right? You send the public key, I could go back and check whether it's indeed owned by an entity that claims it is by talking to an identity provider or a CA, right? But that's going to be quite different in the KEM. So how do you solve that? It's a much more complicated process where if you want authenticated key exchange, then basically the peer also has to generate keys and then basically send both the ciphertext and the public key, and the client and server has to do a combination function that they combine the shared secrets generated by each of that. So the steps involved are quite lot more if you want to do a scheme with KEM versus what you would have done in Diffie-Hellman. So we are not sure whether any of the protocols would need this scheme right now, but yeah, we need to go back but this is quite achievable, but with certain overhead involved. The most important aspect is the criteria, right? What is the criteria that someone would decide that, hey, can I replace the current traditional algorithms and migrate to post-quantum cryptography? For key agreement, it has to be IND-CCA2, which is basically protection from chosen ciphertext attacks. And for UFE-CMA, this is for protecting against forgery attacks. So signatures should be capable of protecting or defending from any adversary who's trying to fake signatures. And if those criteria are met, right, then only you can start leveraging those algorithms. Otherwise, you should evaluate whether your system should leverage that or not. But this is the basic criteria that I would see any ITF protocol would pick to see if they are IND-CCA2 secure or UFCMA secure. IRTF at CFRG has also defined stateful hash-based signature schemes, which is quite different, right? They don't face the uncertainty like what PQC algorithms are facing because they are hash-based signatures, but they have certain challenges that you can't sign a potentially large messages, but you can only sign a fixed set of messages. You can't reuse the key every time you're supposed to change the secret key, and the number of signing operations would depend on the size of the key, and depending on the size of the tree, right, your key generation time versus the signature validation and signature computation time would also vary. XMSs and LMSs are typically not used in TLS and other online protocols. It could be used, for instance, firmware updates is a very classic use case that could use stateful-based signatures, but it's not meant to be used for something which is short-lived or online-based one like TLS or DTLS. One of the questions that we got when we were discussing the draft was, hey, should we go with hash then sign or sign then hash? And then we had basically said that, hey, anyone who's doing signatures should be first get a fixed size digest of the message that needs to be signed. And you basically rely on the collision resistance of hash function. So that's the same technique that's used by TLS 1.3 and DNSSEC that use hash then sign paradigm. So the recommendation in this draft is go with the hash then sign paradigm than the sign then hash paradigm. That would be a better approach. Yeah, I think we talked about PQT hybrid confidentiality a lot, and I'm not going to run over that. But if you see the last bullet in this slide, it talks about what's happening in IQV2, how this would work with IPsec, and what RFC has been already done that. And there's some discussions at ITF on how we can customize some of the multiple key exchanges to just a bare minimal of 2 of them, right? So TLS and both IPsec are going hand in hand because they are the primary transport security that's leveraged by the industry, and both of them need to be upgraded, right? I think I would not say TLS is higher priority than IPsec. Both must be upgraded as quickly as possible because IPsec is also predominantly used for privacy and other reasons, and you would want them to be upgraded to be protected from PQC threats. We talked about, I think Bas talked about hybrid authentication scheme. It's a very complex scenario, right? And there's a lot of discussions. If anyone is interested to join the discussions that are happening, they're all happening in the LAMPS working group where PKI and certs are being discussed. So lots of heated debates on the hybrid schemes for signatures, challenges of web PKI, how to get it deployed, what are the use cases. So I suggest if someone is interested in this, join that working group and look into the work happening. Currently, our draft is basically saying that we need to watch out the discussions happening in LAMPS working group. And once there is consensus, we plan to update our draft as well. But we are actively participating in both the LAMPS and the PQUIP working group. So I think we should definitely talk about the security levels. So if you see the security level as it increases, the hardness increases. So for instance, security level is A1 is 128, whereas security level 5 is 256. And if you see the key sizes would also increase. The first level would have Kyber 512 and the last level would have Kyber 1024. And as the security level increases, your public key size increases, right? Let's say 512 is 800, whereas 1024 is much larger than that, nearly twice that. The private key size would increase, and the most important one is the ciphertext size will also increase. Spinix has an interesting mechanism, which is a hash-based variant. It is not susceptible to PQC threats and traditional threats because it's based on hash-based signatures. It has two variants. One is for fast verification and one is for compactness and smaller size. So if there is an F suffix, it means it's for faster verification, in which case if you see the signature size would be much larger. But if it is S in the suffix, then it would see that the signature size would be much smaller, right? So you have an option depending on the deployment, right? Let's say if you're working on IoT devices and you have running in a network where it is quite lossy, you may want to go with small signatures, and that depends on the deployment. So it gives you a flexibility to pick one among them. And all these algorithms, right? That's the reason this is doing a second round, have various challenges and limitations. Dilithium generates signatures much faster, but Falcon is much more efficient with signature verification. Falcon has much more lower key and signature sizes. Spinix has smaller key sizes, but very large signature sizes and slower signature generation and slower verification compared to Dilithium and Falcon. So each of them have their own pros and cons. So it's depending on your deployment. You have to pick and choose one of them or multiple of them at various levels. Like TLS handshake, you use one signatures, and after post TLS handshake, you may pick another signature. So it all depends on the use case and protocol and the environment which you're deploying that. We talked about Falcon already, the challenges with that it uses 64-bit floating operation. Masked implementation is not possible with Falcon, and side channel attacks are possible. So Falcon has issues. So it cannot be used on commodity hardware. So if someone is planning to use Falcon, due diligence is required to make sure it's not susceptible to side channel attacks. The key sizes, if you see why he kept talking about key sizes, is if you take any Diffie-Hellman or Cow 256, look at the key sizes, it's 65, whereas if you go to Kyber, it's 100 times larger, and the ciphertext also increases exponentially. So that's the overhead you are bringing in, right, once you migrate to post-quantum cryptography. There are several, even that's the same problem even with signatures as well. The signature sizes are much larger, and the key sizes are also much larger. Coming to the last part of the slide, right? I mean, crypto analysis needs to be done for today. Crypto analysis is done for identifying algorithm design, mathematical vulnerabilities, or implementation flaws, like the TLS Heartbleed attack that was detected a few years back. Whereas quantum crypto analysis is more about cryptographically relevant quantum computers coming and breaking the mathematical problems that was supposed to hard to be solved, but can be easily solved with quantum computers. They both pose threats, right, for security, and we need to now develop algorithms, right, that can cater to both these threats. And that's one big challenge with regard to this. This is not a simple replacement that you would typically do, that, hey, earlier we were using RSA, let's move to Diffie-Hellman. That's not as simple as that migrating PQC. It needs a lot more thorough analysis before someone starts to migrate their systems. Cryptographic agility is quite important for any protocol and system if they want to support newer algorithms, change existing algorithms. Unless you have cryptographic agility, I don't think your systems will be quite vulnerable. There's several PQC schemes, especially the challenges with regard to the signatures one, and the industry is working quite actively to solve that problem. So if anyone is interested, they can definitely join and contribute to that area. That's one of the reasons there's a lot of push for hybrid key exchange, and that's where the industry is gone, and that's how you see browsers and Cloudflare and other CDNs and will start migrating to hybrid scheme. That's about it. If you're interested in this, you can review this draft, post your comments. You can join this PQC working group and contribute to that working group.
Thanks so much, Tiru. That was just an excellent presentation and answers so many questions. I have one question in the window for you guys. Please ask others, and then I have a bunch for you too, of course. So the question from the audience is, what cryptographic algorithms are popular today, asymmetric or symmetric crypto systems? I think he means algorithms.
Yeah, I mean, asymmetric cryptography is basically used as an initial key agreement so that I could prove my identity to the remote peer, right? So asymmetric crypto, all the TLS handshakes start with asymmetric crypto, and then symmetric crypto starts in, right? Asymmetric crypto are quite computational intensive tasks, so you don't use asymmetric crypto for encrypting payload. Asymmetric crypto is used as a baseline to derive a shared secret, which is eventually used for encrypting messages. So you take WebRTC or Zoom call or anything, right? They all start with asymmetric crypto and move towards symmetric cryptography. So one cannot exist without the other unless you are in a quite an controlled domain where you don't want to use asymmetric crypto and you want to use shared keys, pre-arranged shared keys, then it would work, but it won't work in the internet domain at least.
Great, thank you so much. You guys may care to see on the INTC and IIESOC websites, there is my introduction to TLS webinar where we go through the TLS handshake and talk about how in the classic schemes, how the key exchange works with asymmetric and symmetric. But one question that keeps occurring to me is, you know, as far as cryptographic libraries, you know, the ones that many people use are like OpenSSL or Bouncy Castle for Java and things like that. And I think as we go, I mean, I think there are some very hardened crypto libraries that some people are coming out with. You know, having said that, I think many people are going to be using the standard ones, and so and I have to say that the threat of side channel attacks and the implementation itself worries me. You know, in the standard libraries, what is your thoughts on that?
Right. So yeah, as you were discussing previously with regard to forking of OpenSSL and the other challenges, right? That's the reason I think Chrome and Cloudflare are pushing for a hybrid scheme, because you get the FIPS compliance with regard to continue to use the traditional algorithms, but use the hybrid scheme where you use the PQC algorithm itself. So even if the PQC algorithm gets broken, right? For instance, Kyber gets broken in another few months, you would still be protected by your traditional algorithm. So I would suggest, I would not suggest anyone to migrate from completely abandon traditional at this point of time and say that, hey, they want to support Kyber and they don't want to do Diffie-Hellman. I don't think it is the right time to do that, right? Unless we have these new cryptographic algorithms part of FIPS compliance and other compliances, right? So we have to wait and watch how stable they are, run these systems for a few years, and then migrate to pure PQC. So it's going to be hybrid for several few years to come for.
No, yes, no, definitely. No, what I was talking about is the vulnerabilities in OpenSSL's implementation itself. You know, whether like like right now it's like, say, OpenSSL 3.1. And maybe people are already working on it in the cryptanalysis group, you know, in the community, is whether side channels are possible, because there are alternatives. Like I think PQ Shield, they have a library that they put out. It's quite expensive, but I think they've done a lot of work with side channel attacks. So I'm just curious. I've not kept, and you may know quite easily who is doing such work with OpenSSL or Bouncy Castle.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that I have popularly used are OpenSSL and WolfSSL, so I have not used any other open source one. So
yeah, okay, thank you so much. Any other questions from the audience? Or Mike, thank you so much. This was an excellent set of presentations. Any other thoughts? No? Okay, thank you so much. Mohit, might you bring up the very last slide? Then thank you to everyone for being a part of this of connections for this year. As we had said, we're looking forward to having a live connections in India next year. That's still aspirational. When we have the final plans, we will certainly let you know. Please become supporters and members. You can see the links there. Please join us at our webinars, and you can go to our previous webinars and sessions. They're all the recordings and slides are available there. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed everything. And I hope to see you next year and maybe at the upcoming IETF. So I will give a slight a boost for that. We hope to increase participation from enterprises as well as folks from India at the IETF. You can see so many of us know each other from attending IETF. If nothing else, it's a great place to see what the future will hold. So thank you again, and thank you to all the panelists. Okay, bye-bye.
hi, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.